Hey everyone, welcome back. We're going to discuss Matlab, and this was a problem that we did in a previous video. Just a real rough drawing, very rough if you look at my handwriting. We had a graph with attitude along the x-axis, along the y-axis, and percent along the x-axis. And there were three regions. Everything above 7 was the purple region. Below 7, you were either red region if you were below this line, right, that orange line there, or you were in the green region in between purple and red. Now the equation of that line is going to become important, so we'll use y equals mx plus b. And if we look, m is rise over run, so the rise is 3 and the run is 50. But let's keep in mind that that's a downslope, so that's actually a negative 3 over 50. And that's x plus b. B is the y-intercept, and that's 3. Okay, so what I can say then is this line is defined by attitude equals minus 3 over 50 times percent plus 3. Okay, so I'm going to need the equation of that line here as we work into this video. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to get into Matlab, and we're going to utilize Matlab to determine which of these regions we're in. So we're going to need some if-then statements. And then we're also going to utilize some input under the Matlab function as well. Okay, so let's get to Matlab. Okay, so I've started a little Matlab M file here, and I've called it logic else if. And that has to do with the fact that we're doing logic statements, less than, greater than, things like that. And then if-then statements. And Matlab uses an else if, and we'll get into that here in just a little bit because we have more than two choices. If we have more than two choices, we want an else if, because it's like, okay, here's one choice. If it's A, otherwise it's B, but we don't have that. We have it's either A or B or C, right? Or our colors in our case. Okay, so I've started this new file, the logic if, else if, and like I do with a lot of my files, I start with clear and CLC. And then I want to begin to put in some commentary, right? The comments are going to tell me what this function is going to do so that if I look at it later on, I have some idea of what's going on. Okay, so I've got a comment in there showing that this file is to show the use of the if and else if statements in Matlab. And first thing I want to do is I want to input my axes values. All right, so that's what the first line here, line 9 in this file says. PER for percent, and then I'm going to use an input statement so that I have to enter that percentage. So inside single ticks, you'll see what is the percentage, and this should be between 0 and 100, right? And I like to put the space at the end so that there's a little bit of a gap there waiting for the input from the user. All right, so this input function is going to ask the user to give me some input. Well, let's take a look at this real quick just to see how it's going. I mean, this is far from done, but let me run it. And you can see that what pops up here on the top of the Matlab page, the command window, is what is the percentage. This should be between 0 and 100. And so I could say something like 50, and you can see over here in the workspace that there's a variable now called PER, and it's got a value of 50. And of course, that PER comes from the fact that that's what I call that in the program that I'm writing. All right, so let's go to the next page, or the next line, excuse me. So on the next line, you can see I've got ATT for attitude, and my input is very similar. What is the attitude? This should be between 0 and 10. Of course, I don't show all the way up to 10, but it could be, let's say it could be that high or even higher, but let's just say 0 to 10. All right, let's do another quick run. We always like to check to see how things are going. So my percentage is 50, my attitude is 3. Okay, and you can see ATT up here in the upper right workspace has a value of 3. So we're good to go there. Okay, now the next thing I want to do is find out what that boundary is, or the region between red and green. There was that line that we found the equation for. So I'm going to input that line, and again, I want to do so with a little comment. So you can see here some commentary. This is the boundary line between red and green. And we want to find out what the attitude is based on the percentage value I've been given. So I just set boundary as the value of attitude on the boundary line. So what I want to know then is it above the boundary line or below the boundary line? Okay, so remember it was minus 3 times the percentage divided by 50 plus 3. And I can go back here and we can see that that's the same equation that I had there. All right, so we figured out the boundary and we've got the percentage and the attitude. So we're ready to get started on our if statements. All right, so we start off with figuring out whether or not it's purple, and that's going to happen anytime the attitude is greater than 7. So if the attitude is greater than 7, then the region is equal to purple. I don't need any more information. It doesn't matter what the percentage is. If it's greater than 7, I know I'm in the purple range. And you can see I put in a little more comment here. If the attitude is below 7, then I need to go to the boundary. If the attitude is above the boundary line, then I'm in the green region. If the attitude is below the boundary line or not above the boundary line, then I'm in the red region. And there's another if in there, so I'm going to have to use else if. I've got one if here on line 18, but I need another one because I still have a decision to make between two choices. The alternate choice isn't yet set. Okay, so I've got else if, which is basically saying here's another if choice to be made. And if I had multiple else ifs, I would be going even farther. So if my attitude is above the boundary line, then I know I'm in the green region. But if my attitude is not above the boundary line, then I must be in the red region. This particular setup assumes that on the boundary line, it will be red. If I wanted it to be green on the boundary line, I would want to say attitude greater than or equal to the boundary line. Then it would be green, right? But I'm just going to leave it as greater than. So if it's on the boundary line, that's going to count as red. And then once I've got that region, then I want to display that. So here's the name of my variable is called region. And so I just want to display region here. And then that way it'll show up when I run the program. And let's put some comment in there as well. Okay, so I've got a little comment just telling me I want to output or display region. Okay, let's go ahead and run this. And so let's make the percentage 75, which is off to the right-hand side, but let's make the attitude 8. That should put me in the purple region. And you can see my region is in fact purple. It states that over here, all right? Let's run it again. This time let's make the percentage 20. And let's make the attitude 2. So this should be somewhere pretty close to the red region, but it still might be green. And in fact, it is still green. So let's run it again, and we'll give it a smaller attitude. Okay, so let's give it a percentage of 20, and then an attitude of 1. And you can see that puts me in the red range. All right, so we have a pretty good idea there of how to run some if-then statements or else-if statements, if-else-if statements. Okay, I think that should do it for that one. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. Thank you.